All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for logging on to episode 4 of our Top Producer podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest with us today. We're so grateful that he was able to join us and agreed to do this for us. So for those of you that are watching live or seeing this on YouTube or a playback, feel free to like our Top Producer Podcast Facebook page. That's where we go live on these, and also our Facebook page as well. So without further ado, I want to bring up a gentleman that is a top producer, not just in the company that he's in, which is ACN, but in the entire world of network marketing. He has amassed a team all over the world, internationally. People know him from all over the world. He has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of customers and has literally achieved the highest point in the network marketing industry. I know he's got a great story to tell. We've got a lot of questions to ask him, but I want to welcome to the front and to the front of the webinar here, not the front of the room, but Senior Vice President, Circle of Champions member, Simon Abboud. Thanks for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Hey, Shaquille. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
We are so grateful to have you. And I know we have a lot of people that are getting on live right now and watching this. And, you know, everybody that's getting on live, pop in the comments where you're getting on live from, where you're at right now. If you're all over the world, we'd like to know, you know, where you are through all this craziness with the quarantine. So Simon, tell us a little bit about where you are today, because you said you had left the city to kind of go into quarantine.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I've been home in Montreal since for a while now, because we came back from my wife and I came back from Miami on vacation early in March, and when we got back, it was quarantine for people who traveled back home. So we started off, and then quarantine for everyone, and so it's been a little, I want to say maybe 2 months or so that we were pretty much stuck at home and just going grocery shopping. So I got tired of being in the city. So was lucky enough to find through a friend a nice cabin to rent in the middle of the woods here somewhere, a couple of hours out of Montreal. So happy to be somewhere where I can go biking and walking and do business from home this way. So it's pretty awesome.
That's good. Well, you're out in the woods and the mountains, but you still have some internet. So that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Simon, you have been an inspiration to so many people. You know, one of my favorite trainers, and Shaquille can also attest to that. You know, first time I saw you on stage, the big stage in front of tens of thousands of people, you did the pull out the deck of cards, right? And that's one of my favorite trainings, man. And before we get into, you know, what you do, you know, to have so much success, why don't we kind of take everybody back real quick? Because we've put on this podcast to get to know a lot of the top producers in the company, and really why you decided to get involved and how you got introduced. So before you even got introduced to this business, can you kind of fill everybody into what you were doing and kind of pre-Simon Abboud at ACN to Simon Abboud pre-ACN? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, most people actually don't know, because we kind of skip you know, parts of the story just to keep it more streamlined when we share it from stage and things like that.
Right.
But actually, before getting involved with ACN, I did have one other experience in the network marketing space, and I kind of, you know, go through the story in a more simple way when I share it to keep it streamlined. But really, what happened is when I was 19 years old, I was actually a student, and I was finishing something here in Quebec called CEGEP, which is essentially a college right before university, and my goal was to go into law school. That's what I wanted to do. But I was amassing a lot of student loans. I was amassing a lot of debt. And that's when I was introduced to network marketing, to the idea. And what it was actually another service-based network marketing company. And that's the story that I share all the time of the Tony Montana character, right? The Cuban guy. He was actually a guy from Miami that put an ad in a newspaper that I ended up meeting, and he shared with me the concept, and I was blown away that, you know, there was a way to build a business with a very low startup cost right from home, to do it like someone like me that had never had a business, never had a job, start off with very little upfront investment, and just work very hard, and I ended up doing very well after a few years with my first company. So it wasn't easy at first. Didn't make much money at all in the first 6 months. Was struggling both in the customer acquisition part and in the team building part. And eventually kind of got the hang of it and became better when I really started working on personal growth, working on leadership skills, understanding, like everyone needs to understand that if it's up to me, it's up to us, right? And when I really took ownership of the business, things went really well until 4 or 5 years after I got started, when that business, unfortunately, that company went bankrupt. And when they did, that's when I really had to question myself on whether I would be interested or not to continue in the industry of network marketing, which is not a perfect industry. There's a lot of pros and great parts about it, and lots of cons. It was a big questioning in my life, but the biggest one was that the first experience I had was with a company that really didn't think long term. They didn't think about giving us an opportunity to build something that is, in every sense of the word, thought out for the long term. And when I met the owners of ACN, that was now a little 15 years ago, that's when I was blown away by everything these guys had put together. And that's when I got started in 2004. So I went from being a student to getting involved in a network marketing company where I did very well, but unfortunately the company ended up not so well, and had to restart from scratch with ACN in 2004. And it was not an easy way, but it was certainly worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how old were you when you first got introduced to it?
Well, when I got involved in network marketing, I was 19. I just turned 19. It was like less than 2 weeks after I turned 19.
Wow.
And when I got started in ACN, I was 24 years old at the time.
So
both were fairly young, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So 19 years old. And did your family have, your parents, were they in business? Tell us a little bit about your family background. And did that make any impact on you getting involved with business so early in your life?
Yeah, actually, both my parents came from Egypt to Canada in the 60s, so a very long time ago. But they remained very conservative people that really, and I certainly value that. Have always, and I think the same, and I'll probably be teaching the same thing to my daughter I'm about to have very shortly.
Awesome.
That education is very, very important, and that for my parents and everyone in my family, most people ended up taking the professional route. Either being an accountant, or some became engineers or doctors or lawyers, or any kind of profession that way. So my father is an accountant that has a small office from his home, and he's always just been very good to his customers, and have built his small business for a long time. But he's always been a great example in many ways, more on the personal side, and in business is certainly not the visionary, build a big business kind of thing. But it was certainly the great values of working for yourself that I learned from him, for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's good to know, because, some people think the only way you can be involved or be successful in business is if you have super successful parents that, give you you've heard the silver spoon, right? And so that seems like you were kind of going on your own path, because you could have easily just maybe become an accountant or stayed in school.
Yeah, absolutely. Which are all great options, but this one turned out to be particularly great for myself. I'm very happy about it.
So before Shaquille, I know he's got a question or two as well, but you always talk, I love your story, and I was just watching one of your trainings the other day, and always just going back and refreshing, and, just getting that vision for what we want to do and become in the industry. And you always talk about meeting a stranger in ACN that introduced you to the industry, not maybe to ACN, but tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I think that's because people are so worried, I think, about what's the perfect thing to say. How do you approach someone? And they let fear stop them from talking to people. Take us back to exactly how that worked, how you met them, and how that transpired.
Yeah, for sure. I think you touched on something great there. That's probably the one thing that blocks most people from succeeding, both in acquiring their customer base and building a team, it's always the same situation. People fear that they need to be perfect before they get started, that they have to have the perfect vocabulary, that they need to know everything. And if you apply to anything in life, that same rule I just talked about, in my opinion, it's a recipe for failure. Because if you always wait for everything to be perfect, it's very difficult to ever take any action. So the guy that actually introduced me to the business probably did it in the worst possible way. Everything from his approach, which was from an ad in a newspaper that I responded, and he was clearly on a cell phone when he answered the phone. I always share this story, and it was clear there was a bunch of static in the back, and he definitely wasn't very professional spoken or well spoken. It was more like, "Hey, bro, do you want to make some money, man?" It was like more of like a talk like that, and I ended up meeting this guy in a coffee shop, shared the business with him. But I think the most important part was I didn't understand anything really. Like, during the whole presentation, I remember that I just didn't understand anything. But through a series of circumstances, I got intrigued. And what happened, and that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, is that the guy who signed me up, who's actually from Miami, Florida, left Canada very quickly. And I really never had a chance to either learn the right thing from him or learn the bad things from him, because he just wasn't there. So I had to figure out how to do this by myself. And that's another example of how you got to start by being bad and doing things not in such a great way. Because for the first 6 months or so, I would literally have to prospect over 10 people, whether it would be to be a customer or a business partner. I would have to, prospect more than 10 people just to get one to listen. And that one that would listen, I would have to show it to 10 just to get one to be interested and sign up, literally, whether it be as a customer or as an IBO. And when they would get started, probably 9 out of 10 would quit really quickly because I wouldn't know how to train them. I wouldn't know how to help them. And so, but all of these circumstances is really what allowed me to learn and what allowed me to grow. And I think it's part of the process. And one of the things I've developed throughout the years, and maybe it's a little bit different than some other leaders at ACN, is I actually believe in very, very quickly making people be as independent as possible.
Right.
I believe that, profoundly. And maybe the reason why I believe it is because that's the chance I had. Right. That's the opportunity I had, not to have anybody impose upon me their style or their way of doing things. And that allowed me to forge kind of like my own identity and build in the business. So of course there's systems that need to be followed and there's things that are important to follow, but I think it's important to just remain yourself, be true to yourself, keep your personality. And if you have fun doing this, you'll be a lot more successful. And it's easier to forge that identity when you really have no one imposing it upon you. So that kind of like happened to me. And that's sort of like how I ended up indirectly building the business.
You got involved in network marketing off an ad in a newspaper.
Yeah, that would be hard today.
That's so crazy. Yeah. What did the ad say? What did it say?
It said, "Get paid when the phone rings." And I then proceeded to put that ad for 3 years in the same paper. And I got to say, I'm the only idiot to ever answer it. But.
That's great that you said, really getting people to become independent. I think that's one of the, great things about this industry is there's so much support. But then, and again, another bad thing about this industry is there's so much support, because then people feel like they're always relying on their upline or someone else, to help them. And just kind of with Shaquille, he was 20 years old and he lived over 2 hours away from me, 2.5 hours away. So when he got involved, especially at the beginning, it's like 20 years old. I'm like, okay, kid, show me what you got, right? Let me make sure you're serious. And then he started going out there and he had to do it on his own, because when I would go up there 1 or 2 days a week, he didn't have me there every day. And, that's why he really shot up quickly as well. Shaquille, do you have a question you'd like to chime in?
And actually, sorry, I don't mean that, but what you just described is so important, because if you actually analyzed whether it would be in our company or in the industry as a whole, and I'm sure it would be the same in many other businesses that are unrelated to network marketing. But if we just drag down to ACN and what we do, I guarantee you, and this is not scientific in any way, but it's certainly my perception, that if you took the top 100 IBOs in production in ACN, most of them were probably not spoon-fed by someone who put them into business. Most of them were probably like Shaquille or myself or Ahmed Mukhtar, which you had here last week, or many of the other leaders in the company that had to, at least in a very big part, be independent very quickly. So I think the best thing you could do is be a great example of results, so you can inspire. Definitely answer questions and guide, but allow people to grow, just like in anything else. And I think that all to your honor, Shaquille.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and that's a great thing, because you're right. I mean, I was 19 years old when I got involved with real estate, and even though I had people around me, I said, I saw what they were doing. I saw and I said, I got to do this bigger. I got to do it better. And when Shaquille got in, that's what he did. And, sometimes people on my team, they'll know me as being a little tough, because they'll say, where do I find this? Or how do I do this? And I say, I don't know. You tell me. Where do you find it? So exactly. I mean, Shaquille, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, to piggyback, because I'm just listening. I'm just, remembering being young. I got involved, like Mr. Roop said, when I was 20 years old. And I see your story when you got involved at 19. And I can understand, getting involved at 19 when you got in was a little different from when I got involved at 20 years old. But one of the things that I noticed that you was able to do right away was to be able to form an organization that's been known all across the world. And even some of your leaders, hearing their stories about them being in college when they got involved. My question would be, what is one thing you wish you would have known when you first began your career in network marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I thought about that many times, because it's a question we're asked a lot. And the more, I've thought about it, if I could do one thing different, is spend a lot less time with the wrong people and just spend more time with the right people. This business, when you really think about it, if you want to be successful at it, you got to be good at two things. You got to be good at acquiring customers, and you got to be good at teaching others how to do the same thing and build organizations of people who acquire customers, right? And when you think about it, it's so simple. Like, there's no other business in the world that is that simple. You really don't need to be that smart. Now, simple doesn't mean easy. Right. Simple doesn't mean that there's not a whole lot of challenges, and that for a whole lot of people, just like anything in the world, they're probably not going to be tough enough to go through the process to get to wherever they want to go. But it's certainly simple. They're the same steps you're just repeating. And what you got to develop is the mental toughness to be able to repeat them over and over again. And I'm sort of forgetting where we're coming from, but why I'm actually sharing this with you guys is because if you think of how simple it is, what you really got to work on is the relationship with certain individuals, making sure you guide them whenever they run through the challenges. So I would certainly spend more time helping people adjust to the mistakes they're making, because it would be a proof that they're trying and they're working hard and helping them develop, rather than trying to really give information to certain people that are just the wrong one. Like, if you think about the people that develop the largest organizations here, that have the most customers that have been acquired, those organizations are really just based on a few individuals. You really don't need that many. If you want to be a senior vice president here, you eventually need to find 6 really good leaders. And if it took 1 year or 2 years or 3 years for each one, it would still be worth it, right? So if you think about it, you only need to develop long-lasting relationships, and you only need to make sure that you're giving everything, people need to eventually 6 really good people to get to the top of the business, right? So it's just a process.
Right. It's a good business model. I, built in the real estate industry, and this is such a better model, in my opinion, for residual income and just the type of lifestyle. But when you were in college, did you finish school, or did you quickly realize that, hey, you're going to go really full force with network marketing? How did that pan out for you?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't finish school at the time. It's certainly, there's no regrets or positives, but I wish I would have at least done that at that time. I think it's a great milestone in life. But what I did realize was at that point, my opportunity cost was too high to continue, because I was doing this business part-time, but even though it was part-time, it was probably more hours than what most people do full-time, right?
Right.
And I was in school full-time. But in reality, the results started becoming fairly good. And I noticed that, this was something I was good at. I saw the potential and jumped full steam ahead and developed it. However, here's the one thing I'm going to put here, because this is what I tell everybody that asks me. I would always say, especially when it comes to young people, and whether it would be, in ACN or any kind of, network marketing or any kind of business, that of course it's good to dream big and all of these things are necessary. But the beauty about our business particularly is you can actually build it while, you're in school, and you could wait until you can actually prove yourself that you have what it takes by getting the results that would justify making that decision. So whenever I made that decision, I already had results. It wasn't like, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna, go do that. I had results which allowed me to justify doing it. And the reason I say this is because you always have very few exceptions in life for people that are able to burn all bridges and do it all. And that's awesome. And God bless those people. But when you're recommending to others to make decisions on their life, and not everybody, has. So it's so easy here, simple to go get results while you're doing something else. That I think you should at least prove yourself that before you make the decision to really go full-time over here, because you can build a great business here part-time. But in my case, got great results. And at that point, made the decision to pursue this, and turned out great.
Awesome. Yeah. Shaquille, you know a lot about that. He didn't finish either. And then I finished college, and I kind of look at it differently. I'm like, why did I spend all this money in college when, I wanted to be an entrepreneur anyway? So, there's both sides of the story, but
for sure.
But
just
at least
like in anything, right? So
yeah,
so
at least I made my mom proud, but the degree on the wall didn't, I never used it. So Shaquille, you want to ask another question?
Yeah, I remember, talking to Mr. Roop every single day, trying to build a business when I first got involved. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, I got to go to my job at Applebee's, then I have school, then it's like I'm building ACN. And I just made a decision one day to just walk out of class. And I remember, coming back from a convention, and I haven't been back to work since 2013. So, it'll be 7 years for me. But, what is the best resource that have helped you along the way? And what is something that you read or listened to recently that has inspired you?
Yeah, I think definitely by far the best resource for me and the best example I've always been the co-founders of ACN. I've always found right from the beginning that they make, they're just long-term thinkers that make the right, sound decisions, just do it with their good intentions, do it with the pure heart, with integrity, and have an incredible work ethic. So they were just like perfect people, even though the four of them are incredibly different in every way. Like the four of them are just, maybe two of them are more similar in every way, being twins, but they certainly all have like different personalities, different, and I think there's something great to learn from every single one of them. And also being around so many great leaders in ACN at the international events, listening to what people are saying, listening to all of these things, that really, helped me forge the identity that I have. So personally, I think we've just surrounded by so many great examples here of work ethic, of dedication, of mindset, of people that actually do it with their actions and not just with their words. That personally, I've never found a better training to develop this right here than I found right here in ACN. So this is literally where I got probably the majority of my knowledge and mindset, is from all the different leaders and the co-founders of ACN. And as far as books, I definitely enjoy reading different books, listening. Like I learn from everything, I learn in this business, not just from, personal growth books, but also from history books, from politics, but from anything that shows you, how the human mind thinks and how people move and understanding how things go. I'm a little bit of an intellectual in that way. But certainly, if I had to think of what books had the biggest impact for me in the business, it was when I first got started just reading Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because that just allowed me to build relationships with people. And I probably read that book like 20 times and highlighted, all of the important parts. And if I had to give one single book that I think everybody should read, and I think it's totally unrelated to network marketing, but it's the most essential book for network marketing, is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was the biggest one. Obviously, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Obviously, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy shows you, how to, like, there's so many. But if I had to think of one, it would definitely be How to Win Friends and Influence People, that I still love to this day.
That's awesome. Simon, people that get into network marketing, sometimes they feel, this is all their friends are going to want to do it. Oh, this is the greatest idea and the greatest model, and which it is, in my opinion. But did you, sometimes they go through that emotional roller coaster, and a lot of people get knocked off and they don't give themselves enough time to develop and grow like you're talking about, and to really grow through the business. Did you ever feel, at like some point in your career, maybe at a low, I know that the company closed for you, your first one, but maybe just working day by day, going through the motions, making the calls, reaching out to people. Did you ever feel like defeated or at a low, or maybe in a rut, maybe you were stuck? And what did you do to overcome those challenges?
Yeah. Many times, many times. I still do, it's funny because one of the things, people really think that, especially the SVPs have it like naturally, right, that every part of it, which is just the staying motivated, going through the highs and lows, or even like charisma, or like I'm probably, most people, don't realize this, but I'm probably one of the shyest people in the world. Like to this day, if I walk into a PBR, right, or when I have a PBZ nowadays, a virtual that gets started, I'm terrified to this day. Like if I speak to 3 people, and it's weird because the less people, the more nervous I get. The more people, the less nervous. I don't know why, but I'm still terrified. Like no matter what presentation I start, no matter like acquiring whatever it is, I have to overcome that every time. And every single time I think about where am I going to find my next customer, where am I going to find my next, business partner, I'm always, like nervous and terrified. And I have to overcome that with the practice of taking the actions that we've been taking for the longest time. So every single time I've been in a rut, I've just always applied what Greg Provenzano always said, that said, action will take you out of doubt, and doubt will take you out of action. Just action will take you out of doubt, and doubt will take you out of action. And every single time I'm in a rut in my business, all I decide to do is I'm just going to block off all of these negative thoughts, and all I'm going to do is take action. I'm going to go show the business to someone. I'm going to go, acquire a customer. And going through that process always brings me back into a good space, no matter what happens, because I love the business. So every single time I just, explain the concept or the service to somebody, I just get excited all over again. And whenever you end up getting a little bit of a result, it brings confidence, and it gets the whole wheel circling in motion again and going forward. So for me, keeping things simple, it's just like whenever that mindset creeps in, go take action, go do something, and you're going to get results. I remember my first couple of years, I would always, if 11 o'clock at night rolled out, sorry. If 11 o'clock at night rolled out and I still hadn't, prospected people that day, or I hadn't acquired a customer, I hadn't, shown the business to new people, I would literally get out of my house and I would go prospect the first person that I saw. And whenever somebody would say no, I would literally say thank you and think it to myself, because it would be, okay, at least I did that today, right? I always focused. So many times I had like big goals for a day that for whatever reason life got in the way, wasn't able to accomplish it. But every single day, just taking even the smallest of action is worth so much more than the greatest intention in the world. And I think that's how you get out of any rut, especially in this business, because it's so simple.
Wow. That's awesome. Real quick before Shaquille comes in, playing off that, can you remember back when, maybe it was your first, 6 months or year, or maybe it was even longer than that, when you really started getting traction and momentum? Do you remember that moment? Was it a big push? Was it finding the right person and working with that person? Do you remember that big moment that, wow, you said, wow, now everything I was doing just paid off and it just kept growing from there? Is that,
Absolutely. I remember these moments like distinctly and exactly, because first of all, they happen many times. Like there's been spurts of incredible momentum many times over the course of, the 15 plus years I've been involved with ACN, and I could like see them in my mind, like whenever they happen. But the only thing that I always love to share that is in common is the following thing. I kind of separate this business, just like anything in life, in things in two baskets, right? The things that are in my control and the things that are out of my control, right? And whatever is out of my control for some reason doesn't give me much anxiety, because I can't do nothing about it. So I just don't spend any time thinking about it. But whatever is in my control is what I tend to believe I'm going to do to be able to get whatever. So why I'm sharing this in this particular question is because what I've noticed is that the huge spurts of momentum many times over my career at ACN came from some elements that were actually outside of my control, like ACN launching a new service, like ID Seal, for example, right? Or when we got into the electricity business, or every time ACN reinvents themselves, coming out with something new and exciting, or a great promotion or a great service, or whatever the case might be. That is what triggered the big momentum. However, and this is the most important part, is that none of that would have ever existed if I wouldn't have done all the things that were in my control for the long period of time before the things that were out of my control actually happened that allowed for these things to happen. So what does that mean? It means that no matter if I had momentum or not, I was working my butt off day and night. If I go back to my first 3, 4, 5 years, whether it would be when I started network marketing or when I started even at ACN, because I had to restart from scratch, my schedule would kind of look like this. On a Monday night, I was in one particular city. On a Tuesday night, I was in another city. On a Wednesday night, another. I would be doing 4 or 5 cities per week, and each city was at the distance of minimum 1 to 2 hours. In one of those cities were 4 to 5 hours away. Like Montreal, Toronto is like a 5-hour drive, literally. I would go there weekly and come back the same night. I would drive there, do my meeting, come back, the same night. Right. But every single week I was in 4 or 5 different cities, and my schedule all day long was, I had a presentation at like 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon. I would try to get in front of 20, 30, 40 prospects that I would convert either into customers or business partners all day long, and roll them into a presentation that would be my BOM that I did that night in that particular city. So for 3, 4, 5 years, I literally built the foundation by doing that. By doing, of course, Zoom now, and these technologies help a lot, because you could prepare before you visit somewhere whenever we can again, right? By doing a lot of these meetings. But I would go in person, meet people all day long, funnel them back into my presentation at night, drive back home, the following day, drive for 2, 3 hours, go do the same thing all over again, come back home, the following day, drive for 4, 5, 6 hours to go to another city, do the same. And I would do 4 or 5 cities every single week. And I did that for 3, 4, 5 years. And that's what set the foundation that allowed the business to flourish for so many different years. So I was building momentum with or without announcements that were out of my control. But what allowed the business to explode completely out of control were when these things were going on and these announcements came, and I was ready for the moments that were the good moments, right? And there's so many incredible moments in this business. We launch countries all the time. We launch services all the time. And every one of these things represent huge opportunities, right?
Wow. So it's kind of like the mantra of the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? And
basically,
being in this business, it's all about just talking to enough people, because there's people out there like us that see opportunity. They're tired of maybe doing what they were doing. They want a better lifestyle. They want to succeed and change their lives. I mean, even like me, I made a lot of money selling real estate, but it wasn't the lifestyle. You know, I was working 90-hour weeks and had no life. And, you know, yeah, I was making a lot of money, but it wasn't the way I wanted to live forever. Going back, you could have maybe done other things. You could have got a job. You could have got into real estate. You could have done, there's a lot of different things to choose. Why network marketing?
Well, there's two ways to look at this, you know, like at this stage in my life, 40 years old, seen a lot of things, and you know, my thought process would probably be different, probably would come to the same conclusion, but it would be different. But the real reason why I chose network marketing is just because that's the only thing that I saw that, you know, allowed me to start with the no money that I had, with the no experience that I had, with the no choice. For me, it was not an option to stop going to school. I needed to continue doing that while I could do something else at the same time. So for me, it was, you know, first advantage, very low cost. Second advantage, that I could do it part-time until I proved myself that I had what it takes to be able to go into it full-time. The third thing is that's the only thing I knew that I could do that had the potential to scale and that had the potential to grow and that I could learn. And, you know, especially at that age, is one of the very few businesses in the world where you don't need to understand all of the bases of you know, like of accounting, all of the bases of like all the things that are really necessary for any traditional business to operate successfully. So for me, it was sort of like, wow, this is perfect. It's made for me. All I need to do is, you know, it's a very little startup cost. Yeah, I'm going to need to work hard. I'm going to need to develop the skill of getting customers, building a team, and this could scale. And like, it was just like the business in a box, the perfect thing for me at the time. So it's not like I had like 12 options in front of me and I picked that one. And thankfully so, because who knows if I would have been smart enough to pick that one at the time, you know. Right. Looking at it today, it's such a powerful business, you know. To me, it's like we live in a world today where you got to have multiple streams of income. We live in a world today where you got to find a way to, at the very least, find, you know, have a plan B ready in case something happens, right? And we certainly see this right now in the world. I wouldn't even, you know, maybe I'm not very popular in the network marketing circles when it comes to that, but I'm not the greatest fan of network marketing as a whole in an industry, because I find that too many companies, and the majority of companies, aren't really selling a product or service that the customer will use regardless is he's a part of the, you know, opportunity or not. Too many times the people just buy into the opportunity instead of, you know, buying into the product. And here, what I love at ACN is that more than 90% of, you know, the users that pay for the services every single month have nothing to do with the opportunity, right? And that is what super exciting. It's real, it's logic, it's recurring. With all the inconvenience that it has, it's very powerful. So analyzing it from every like business metric is very smart. But when I first started, I couldn't even, you know, figure that out. It was just like, why not this? That's the only thing that gives me those possibilities, that is scalable, and let's go do it. You know?
It's like, that's the only thing I can do. So yeah, it's cheap enough to get involved, right? Let's go.
I just turned 19, you know, what the hell did I understand? Right?
Go ahead, Shaquille. We got a couple more questions and we'll kind of tailor it, you know, start to end it, and go ahead.
So I was listening and reading interview that you did, and you said, you know, what appealed to you most about, you know, ACN in this industry was, you know, true residual income. And I know, you know, seeing the videos of the success, you've been pretty successful for a long time. You know, the question would be, what is your true definition of freedom? Now that you have the time, you know, you're making a lot of money and things like that, like, what do you personally consider freedom?
Yeah, maybe it is cliche, but freedom to me is doing what you want, when you want, wherever you want, with whoever you want. And there's no other way of getting there that through extremely, extremely hard work for a long time into something that is real, something that is tangible. The only reason why I've been able to sustain, you know, this level of success with ACN for so long is because the vast majority of our incomes, no matter what level you're at, if you build a good business at ACN, come from the actual residuals of actual, like customers that are using services that they just don't stop using. So freedom to me is doing what I want, when I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. But, it's not, look, I think one of the biggest problems in our industry as a whole, and, is that people tend to, get someone involved in the business and for some reason not really make it clear that if you want to get, the really, really big results, you're going to need to work very, very, very hard. And that there's going to be challenges. There's going to be all sorts of challenges throughout the way, but that it's going to be worth it. And the vast majority of people do say that and say it correctly and communicate it. But to me, like, those are one of the things that I attribute success to, is that I've always been, very transparent with anybody that I show this business to in terms of what it really takes to make it very big. And for so many people, the reason why they get involved with us is just like complementary income anyways. So, the plan that you're giving them is a different plan. But at the end of the day, that transparency and the fact that we're in a real legitimate long-term, business with an incredible customer base is what allows us to keep that longevity and have that freedom.
Yeah, that's good. And, comparing people to really the people that make it to the top in this industry. I mean, a lot of people that we talk to, Simon, I know you hear it all the time. People say they're too busy. Then you hear, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%. And, I know it takes a lot of work, but, I own 5 real estate companies, so I was busy. I was running, we had 20 plus agents. We had 200 rental properties, we were very busy. And then we went through the crash of 2008. And that's really what woke me up, because I said, I'm not going to spend 10 more years or 20 more years to build another business where one day it could just, because of the economy or a virus or something, could just, crash and that all be gone. So for me, I went through that hardship, and that's what really motivated me. And I saw the lifestyles of the SVPs and the RVPs, and I saw residuals, and, but then you have the traditional business owners that say they're too busy and they're happy with what they got. What really distinguishes the people, in your opinion, that really go to the top versus other people that get in and might not make money or a little bit of money? And then they, their friends say, oh, it didn't work. And then they say, oh, I didn't have time to do it. So what's the one or two or things that really, that you've seen really get those people, what characteristics, get those people to the top rather than a lot of people that don't get to the top?
Yeah, absolutely. By far is longevity, like how long you actually stick in the business, because very few people make it very quickly. You need to give it a certain amount of time, and for many valid reasons, first one being, in many cases, you'll have people tell you it's not for me, not right now. And the only way you'll eventually be able to enroll these people into the vision of what we do is if you're still doing it, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that they realize that whatever you offered them is a powerful, legitimate, long-lasting model that they could build something on. So longevity is key. But of course, if you stick around for a very long time, but you never do anything, it doesn't matter how long you stay, because the action is what is actually going to, produce the results to you. So I would say that the biggest difference outside of the amount of time that you spend, because some people actually spend a long time and never make it too, right? The biggest difference is going to be the level of commitment that one has, the level of effort, the level of dedication. I don't know anybody who became an SVP at ACN and who built the lifestyle that they really dreamt of without sacrificing a whole lot, and you do have to sacrifice. So it really depends on what, what the goal of someone is, right? The majority of people that I sign up into this business don't have the goal of being an SVP. So what I tell them very clearly is okay, so this is what your plan of action every single week. We're going to spend, 3 hours. This is what we're going to do in those 3 hours. This is how we're going to do it. If you keep on doing this for X amount of time, you'll eventually be successful, but at the level that you should expect. Now, if someone is listening to this And I know some people are, and they want to be SVP. That's what they want to do. They want to get to the highest level. They want to be a part of the, less than 1% of people that have extraordinary results here. Then there's only one way to do it. And it's to make a commitment to work your butt off, to learn the system, to go through the nose, to accept the fact that the majority of people you talk to will not do this, to accept the fact that this is not easy, to accept the fact that many times it will be unpopular, to accept the fact that your goal is not to win a popularity contest. Your goal is to get to the end result of where you want to go. And if you're doing it genuinely in the right way, you'll be able to get there. If you do all of those things, you're going to get there. But you can look at any one of the SVPs that are in ACN. Not one of them haven't worked their butts off. Not one of them haven't literally had to get a lot more no's, whether it be for customers or team members, a lot more no's than anybody that's not reached SVP. I promise you, every single SVP in ACN had more people tell them no, had more people try to discourage them than anybody at a lower level in the company. There is nobody that is an executive team leader or a regional director that had more no's than the SVPs.
Right.
It's math. Now, of course, you get to change that a little bit by how good you become at developing the business, building relationships and all that. But at the end of the day, it remains a numbers game and a relationship game. And if you're in there for the long term and you build it right, you get there. That's just how it works. You just got to be patient.
You're right. And, again, I kind of come from the side of things where I did have 5 real estate companies and I was busy and, and you just got to decide where you're at now. Is that where you want to be, in the next 3 years, or are you willing to do something different? And I was willing to put in that extra time, put in that consistency to get there. So, and it's like Greg Provenzano says, he says, if I told you you could be an SVP and all you had to do was talk to and show 500 people the business, and then on the 500th person, you would be an SVP, how long would it take you to talk to 500 people and show them the business, right? And we got to get that in our minds, because if we just have that mentality of showing 500 people, there's going to be people like us that see it and want a better life. So we're going to go ahead and turn down here just maybe 2 more questions. Shaquille, do you have another question for Simon, or you pretty much questioned out?
I have one more question. So I know you got started when you was 19. At what age did it take you to be like that aha moment, like this thing really works? I feel like where you feel as though like you've kind of made it, even though you probably haven't made it, but because of where you was, $25,000 in debt to now starting to make some money. When in that age was that moment when you was just like, this is what I really want to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, the big breakthrough, maybe not that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, but the big breakthrough of like, wow, wow, right? That was at 22 years old, 3 years after I started, because that's when I finally had some people that I was working with that were, committed, that I noticed would be there for the long term. I mean, I've had a lot of people that said they were committed, for my first 3 years, and they just never, sometimes they would do it for 3 months or 6 months, but they would never, but 3 years into it, I started attracting people that I saw really, really had, long-term vision and all of that. And I probably guessed at that point, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. But now when I became, sure that, wow, this is something, incredible, is probably, 3-4 years into ACN, when I just noticed the amount of customers just like increases in an incredible way. And like it's just, I would notice, so many people acquiring customers all over the place in so many countries all over the world. In my case, I have a business in pretty much all of the countries that ACN exists in. I have a business literally, pretty much all over the place. And when I started seeing, the amount of customers per country on all the different services and the diversification that it had, I was like, wow, this is really something. Because the concept then became reality. And when that happened, that was extremely powerful. But that first, part, which is really like when I started being like, wow, that's 3 years into it. It took me 3 years to really, really get it going. But there were 3 years of tough work. It wasn't 3 years from the moment I signed up.
Yeah. Well, it's like tough work with anything. You know, I did my real estate business, tough work, up and down, people come, people go. And I've done tough work in ACN, and I like the ACN payoff more than, you know, the real estate side.
100%. And to your point, Adam, I'm sure, and I don't know what those numbers are, but I'm sure if you actually evaluated how many people said, hey, I'm going to go into real estate in any capacity, whether it would be as an agent, whether it would be as a broker, whether it would be as an investor, in any capacity.
Right.
And how many people are still primarily living from real estate, 10 years later after they said they would make that decision. The amount of people is very low. And that is true in everything in life. Right. So to your point, ACN is just like anything else. You want to make it, you have to work your butt off. You have to be different than others. You have to be the one that shines. You have to be the one that sets the example. You have to be the one that builds good relationships. You have to do whatever you have to do to be good at anything else, apply it here, but in a powerful model that gives you the advantages of very low upfront cost. What are you risking except, time? All of these things that are the advantages of what we do. How else could you build something all over the world, diversified into so many different services, right from home, following a simple system with people that will teach you, and that there's no deadline. Like you could, there's no deadline. You have the luxury of thinking long-term here. And this is not a luxury that exists in many places. So that's exciting.
I was telling people, I said, I sold my real estate business last summer, going through a transition still with that. But I said, I was tired of one office, one roof, one location, and now we're hearing, I don't know if you follow Grant Cardone, but 10X, right? Exponential growth, residual income. So it's becoming more popular today. Simon, I appreciate your time so much. I know everybody watching does. And outside of ACN, are you remodeling any more houses? Because I've seen your amazing home in Montreal. Are you getting into that business a little bit? Do you do interior design for other people or flipping any houses?
I'm not. I definitely enjoy that, but no, ACN is definitely my primary focus and my active business, right? And I do some real estate in small capacities and things like that, but mainly just as investments. So ACN is definitely what occupies my time, and I'm definitely super excited about continuing to expand in Latin America. About new services, like we're releasing in Canada a TV product shortly. We're releasing other services here. We just had a deal with a mobility company over here, which we've expanded there. ID Seal is so exciting. Like you just look at all the product portfolio all over the world. So launches of services, launches of countries. I love when something new happens to strategize on how to take advantage of the growth that is going to come from that particular sector. I just love it. It's fun. So this is what I do. The real estate's for fun.
Well, and that's good, because so many people say they want to do this and they want to do that, and you got to focus. You got to build something. You got to do it. You can't keep trying to do everything. And
that's the biggest mistake. Sorry, Adam. I think that's the biggest mistake people make at anything. And there's so many philosophies. Like no matter what somebody thinks, you'll always have somebody that thinks the opposite that ended up being right. So I'm not pretending like I have the only truth here, but I will say this. One of the biggest mistakes that, especially the younger generation makes nowadays is they think that they could be an expert at everything. Right. And you could certainly learn lots of skills, but if you want to dominate any particular area of business, there's a lot of very smart people trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And if you don't know how to differentiate yourself, if you don't know how to excel at what you do, luck is not how most people succeed. Most people succeed because they decide, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be laser focused. I'm going to be good at that. And I'm going to find out how I could shine in that space. And that's definitely something I believe in.
That's perfect way to end it. And, when I got at ACN, I saw the RVPs on stage. I saw the SVP promotions. I watched the YouTube videos, And I said, that's going to be me. I'm going to shine. And that was Shaquille. You know, I remember him going to his first convention and just watching him see that vision, and he caught it. And so congratulations on all your success. You said you have a daughter on the way, huh?
Yeah, we're 2 months away. So hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully everything goes good. But we're very excited. First one.
July is the due date?
July 26th. Yeah.
Okay, so Leslie and we have a daughter coming September. So.
Oh, congrats!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're right behind you, man. We're going to be girl dads. We're going to be girl dads, right?
It's a good year to be a girl dads with Kobe, right? So.
Well, Simon, thank you so much. We know you're building this business all throughout the world, and we appreciate you taking an hour out of your day and your time. And I know this just means so much to everybody watching. So for all you all watching, please show Simon some love in the comments. Follow him on Facebook. He's connected all around the world. And this is going to be uploaded to YouTube. So you'll be able to find it on my YouTube page as well. And we'll share that information. Simon, thank you so much. And if there's anything else you'd like to comment, I'll leave it to you.
Just thanks, Adam. Thanks, Shaquille. And congrats on both of your successes. You guys are doing awesome. And this is a great initiative. And it was a pleasure to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
all right, guys. Let's go out and make it a big week.
Ciao, everyone.
Yep. Let's end the week big and go into the weekend strong, guys. Let's make it happen. Have a great day. God bless and happy Memorial Day weekend. Take care.